Okay, we're doing the under the hood inspection, pre-trip inspection. We have our coolant reservoir. Cap is in place, hoses are tight and secured, no leaking. We have our alternator that is belt driven, not bent, broken or cracked, no loose or missing parts. We have our serpentine belt, which is not twisted, frayed, or worn, and if we pull on it, doesn't give us no more than half an inch of play. We have our water pump that is also belt driven, not bent, broken or cracked, no loose or missing parts, and it's not leaking. We have our front and rear spring mounts that is not broken, bent or cracked, no loose or missing parts. We have our torque and spring leaf, which is not shifted, bent or broken, and it's no loose or missing parts. We have our U-bolt, which is properly in place, not bent, broken or cracked, no loose or missing parts. We have our shock absorber, which is bolted from the top and the bottom, not bent, broken or cracked, no loose or missing parts, and there's no sign of leaking. We have our brake line and our ABS line, which is tightly secured to our brake chamber, which is not bent, broken or cracked, no loose or missing parts. We have our push rod and our slack adjuster, which is not bent, broken or cracked, no loose or missing parts, and if we pull on the slack adjuster, we don't get no more than an inch of play. Behind our tire, we have our brake dust cover, which covers our brake drum, which has no oil, grease, or debris, and our brake line that is not worn dangerously thin. Our tire is properly inflated. It is evenly worn. It doesn't give us, and we don't have no less than 432 of tread on here. The face of our tire has no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. Our rim is not bent or cracked, and there's no illegal welding. Our lug nuts are not missing. They're tight, and there's no shiny treads or rust trails. Our outer hub oil seal is not leaking. They're not missing any bolts, and is properly filled with oil. And our valve stem is properly centered, not cracked or damaged. We're going to go around to the other side. Here we have our wires, hoses, and lines that are properly secured. We have our oil dipstick. We check our oil by pulling out the dipstick. We pull out the dipstick, we wipe it off, we put it back in and pull it out again, and it should read between empty and full. We have our air compressor, which is gear driven, not bent, broken, or cracked, no loose or missing parts. We have our steering shaft, which doesn't give us no more than 10 degrees of play. That is connected to our gearbox, which is properly mounted, not bent, broken, or cracked, no loose or missing parts. Attached to our gearbox is our pitman arm, our drag link, and our tie down, which are bolted securely, not bent, broken, or cracked, no loose or missing parts. Right here, we have our power steering fluid reservoir, which we check the same way we check our oil. We pull out the stick, wipe it off, put it back in, take it out, and it should be between empty and full. Attached to our power steering fluid reservoir is our power steering pump, which is also gear driven, not bent, broken, or cracked, no loose or missing parts. We would also check our spring mounts, rear and front spring mounts, to make sure they're not broken, cracked, or bent. We would also check our torque and spring leaf, which is not shifted, bent, or broken. We would also check here for our U-bolts, which is properly placed, not bent, broken, or cracked, no loose or missing parts. Our shock absorber here is also bolted from the top and the bottom, not bent, broken, or cracked, no loose or missing parts, and there are no signs of leaking. We also had checked our brake line and our ABS line, which is tightly secured to our brake chamber, which is not bent, broken, or cracked, no loose or missing parts. Our push rod and our slack adjuster are not bent, broken, or cracked, no loose or missing parts. And again, if we pull on the slack adjuster, it doesn't give us no more than an inch of play. Behind the tire again, we have our brake dust cover, which covers our brake drums, which are not oiled, greased, and free of debris. We have our brake lining that is not worn dangerously thin. Our tire is fully inflated, not evenly worn, and we do not have no less than 432 of tread. Same thing. On the front, we have no abrasions, bulges, or cuts on our tire. On the face, on the rim, is not bent or cracked, and there's no illegal welds. Our lug nuts are not missing, tight, and there's no sign of shiny treads or rust trails. Our outer hub oil seal is not missing any bolts. It's properly oiled, filled with oil, and it's not leaking. And our valve stem is straight, centered, not broken or cracked or damaged. And that's it.